Hi, welcome. On this video, this is part one of my response by way again of a situation in dog training world. Here pictured here, Mark Dubose, who again I really appreciate Mark coming on to my recent podcast, and appreciate his level of just transparency, his honesty when talking about his journey with his dogs. I would really encourage you if you haven't checked that podcast out, check it out. It's available on my Rumble channel, and I have available on my website as well. And so it's a great. I felt it was a great interview, and so this series of videos is in on the heels of that, responding to some of the comments. And here's the thing: I kind of refrained from responding here, just because again just the dog training world, you see so much divisiveness, you see all these trainers going back and forth, but at the same time I feel it's important to provide clarity, to respond. So I'm going to respond to some of the comments. I had removed quite a few videos here pertaining to who I'm going to bring up here in this video. um, Kevin Murdoch, anti-dog training, is one of the individuals. But again, it's just the dog training world is not in good shape. Okay, because again, I talk about the source of the problem, and I call it the question of the century. Okay, it's posted up front and center, top of my Facebook page, pertaining to the criteria that these trainers, okay, are using. And I talk about trainers, I talk about the majority of trainers out there, whether they identify as balanced, force free, play based, what the criteria is they're using to establish that perception of dogs are changing the right way within the framework of response, absent, okay, reconciling the core ingredients I talk about, influence and control at the social level, based on a process. Okay. And I talk about, and again, you don't want to take my word for anything. If you do your own audit, you'll see just how common it is for dogs to be looking fantastic, moving around in the training environment, or at times responding. And next thing, a moment later, they're trying to rip someone's arms off. Okay. It's just that, okay, what's going on here? This is like contradiction. Is there something wrong with the dog? And see, this is where the whole blame shifting is part. It's like the package deal. Okay, it's all part of what's going on in the dog training world. So the blame shifting at this level, because when I talk about the majority of trainers out there approaching a relationship problem as a type of a learning based exercise, which it is not. Okay, the way it's being marketed by these many trainers, the majority of these trainers, then blaming dogs. Understand when you get to that level, blaming dogs seems to be normal. It's not normal. Okay, but and I've done many videos. I encourage you to check out my Flipping the Script series. I'm re-releasing a lot of content. I do put out there. I do take what I call social media breaks at times. I just step away from all of it because it's so bad. The dog training world is at such a bad level that when I put information out, it just, the amount of just nastiness, these cheap shots from these trainers, which we're going to talk about in these series of videos, um, is is unbelievable, but totally believable once you understand what you're dealing with. So, but here's the thing, just as a disclaimer here, not putting this out, Mark DeBose, again, I appreciate him coming on my podcast. This is my own response. My name's mentioned throughout, it's peppered throughout some of these videos is based on the podcast I did. So I wanted to go through some of this just to, provide clarity. Okay, just common sense. And but Mark may have a different response to what I have to say. Understand that him and I are not connected that way, which is great in a way, because it's like I brought on my podcast, he was providing information I hadn't even heard before, because I don't communicate with Mark, that way. I mean, he's his own person, he's his own, trainer. He went on his journey, which I found even more, to me, more amazing. The fact now, I provided some video content for him, but I'd never guided him or did a consult with him or anything like that. He's on his own journey. And so, but this is just me. So just a disclaimer here. This isn't like defense of Mark or whatever. Okay, this is, Mark may choose not to respond to all the, the recent, I'm going to talk about recent videos put out too by anti-dog training going through, but this is my thing. Okay, this is just my own responses here. So, but I'll say I do appreciate Mark coming on my podcast. I want to have him on again at some point, and so that's that's all in the works here. So I'll reach out and have Mark, hopefully Mark, come on again, talking about his journey. But again, another thing here is understand that I'm going to be doing quite a few videos here as I get rolling once again into some of this stuff going on in dog training world. But I'm going to be putting, this is part one. I'm going to have several parts, but if you want kind of to see all the parts in advance, you can check out the member area option. So I'm going to be posting these videos, all the parts as part of the member area option first. And this video here, part one, will be released right away, but I will be releasing them, in over a course of several days or whatever, um, you know, publicly as part of my YouTube channel. But if you want to see, you want advanced viewing of these videos, I'll have them posted in the member area option. So that's what I'm going to be doing from now on with a lot of my breakdown videos. So I encourage you to check out the member area. And the member area option is a one-time payment, and you get complete access, lifetime access to all my extra videos and instructional videos, insightful videos, these type of videos. And so there's a bunch more content that's beyond just my YouTube channel, instructional videos. You can check out the member area option. Now I'm back on WordPress, so people wonder back on WordPress just because of I've been back and forth, kind of testing the waters with a couple platforms. So I'm hunkering down on WordPress, and that's where I'm going to be at. So you can check that out. So again, you want to see these in advance, then check out the parts I'm going to have there. Now here again, this whole thing um, with Mark, and Mark had put out again, he had done, he put out especially his recent videos. He put out some videos which I found were like very insightful. In fact, when I watched his videos, okay, the recent ones, he had made some really insightful comments that for me it just really got my attention, because when I heard what a couple things he said in terms of his interactions with his dogs and what he noticed in certain points of those interactions, it's impossible for him to say the things he said and not have a certain level of insight. That for me, I knew that he was at, he was beyond appearances. He was at a certain point with his dogs. That's it. And in fact, I'll go through and talk about some of that as I go through this series of videos. But this video here, again, he put out this video talking about dog training was not short-lived, not a permanent fix. Okay, this is where he was talking about, basically summing up his journey. In fact, this is the last video he's done. He hasn't done any videos here in a little while, because I think he kind of steps away from social media that way. He's working on his dogs. Okay, he's working on his dogs, making great progress. Okay, and which is fantastic. Now, I want to scroll down because again, I want to go and respond to some of these comments here. Um, the thing that jumps out here is people, yeah, commenting about appreciating his honesty. Now he did go back and he's talking about, you know, the whole picture problem. Okay, because one of the things in the podcast, because one of the things he did send me, send me a message saying, how do I, or how can you tell a real from a fake picture? He sent me a message. It was just kind of out of the blue, and I was like, okay, well, I gave him access to area of my website, the member area. Okay, that again goes into this in great detail. Okay, into moving beyond appearances. Okay, talking about I talk about what is a process. Okay, that's where I really get into all of this. Um, so we talk about that. Um, just want to go down through here and get into some of these comments. Because here's the thing, and again, I talk about this. You know, here's one here from you see this person show up a lot in some of these videos in a kind of a critic, try to be critical. From um, Bully Lover 76. I was wondering in your podcast with Dale, you criticize others for not showing update videos or showing their work. Can you point me to videos where you show your dog at their worst part using the current method, showing the process and showing the finished product? Now, here's the thing. So, understand a lot of these trainers go in, and this is what I talk about certain individuals. It's like no matter what you say, okay, because here's the point: is you're dealing. I said this before. Okay, understand what you're dealing with here in the dog training world. You're dealing with dog trainers who are already established. Okay, they already identify a certain way. And when you do that, okay, say if you identify as a balanced dog trainer, okay, you've already hedged yourself in, so to speak. Okay, it's like signing a contract. Okay, you've already agreed to seeing things a certain way. Okay, your idea. Talk about the four quadrants. Okay, talk about you motivating dogs. I talk about balanced dog trainers the same way, how they motivate dogs to how they jump in just like force free dog trainers. So their idea about a training process is the same as say force free trainers. They see it as a learning based exercise. Okay, so they're focused on appearances a certain way. I talk about this whole issue about lack of depth, lack of context, lack of when in terms of response itself, being able to establish that those responses, okay, can be trusted. Okay, that the how the dog perceives you within those responses themselves, represent that good things are happening. Because again, you should ask the question. I mean, it's the same. That's why I keep talking about the parent example. Sure, you can you can incentivize and motivate a child to do certain things, pick up their toys, clean their room, right? But it's about relationship as well. It's about again how you're perceived in that. Okay, so in terms of once a child has a bad attitude, okay, and the relationship problem is underway, they're selfish, and you got all these things going on. Ask yourself the question: where how do you okay engage the relationship problem? Do you simply incentivize? Are you looking at responses as that way as your gauge as your way to discern or test or that things are getting better? Hey, here's $100, take the garbage out. I mean, this is how ridiculous. Understand how ridiculous the dog training world has become. How like there's been really a total absence of critical thinking because you have to apply critical thinking here. And then one of the things I like about Mark Dubose's journey, and again, there's lots of things I talk about in this series of videos, which I encourage you to think about. Okay. One thing I liked about Mark Dubose's journey was that he stepped away from social media for periods of time. Like he disengaged. And that whole thing with introspective and with critical thinking and with, asking those questions. This is where it comes down. When I talk about the individual, okay? The ability to just not be stimulated or distracted. I think the problem here is that, we talk about, and I talk about certain things getting the mix here, ego, pride, just hey, I'm right. Because we'll get into this stuff too. I'll talk about some of the themes here about being able to see things, okay, for how they really are and be able to step back from all of it. But, I think I like about Mark was again, he stepped away from social media at times and just focused on his dogs and but asking those questions, which I tell people like a lot of these trainers, this is what aggravates me about a lot of these trainers, I'll tell you, because I read stuff, right? It's like because they approach it, there's no introspective here. Okay, with a lot of these individuals that, it's like no matter what you say to them, like because understand the thing that the I talk about the dishonest part of all this, the thing that's unethical, the real twist here Okay, really think about what I'm saying is the dog training world is in such a mess. Okay, there's when I talk about there's so many dog owners struggling, there's so many dogs being destroyed, medicated, blame shifted on. And here's the thing, okay, when you have these trainers, because I hear them, I've gone on, and watched some of their videos, and they'll come out, these balanced dog trainers will at times will admit, okay, in moments of honesty, about this whole thing about having a conversation about euthanizing a dog. Okay, they don't want to talk about but that's understand. This is where there's because that's there has to be an off ramp for these individuals. There has to be. There's a blame shifting going on, guaranteed. Right. And this is the dishonest part of what's happening in the dog training community is that a lot of these trainers. This is the shim sham part of it. That this is why I really have a problem with what's going on in the dog training world because this is a reality. This is happening all the time. These trainers they don't want to confront it and then they want to try to tear down, right? They want to try to. It's like a straw man's argument here. It's not about evidence here. They want to try to do anything to distract. Okay, they don't want to. It's like trying to talk to a politician, right? When I focus in on what the real problem is, they can't deal. They can't respond to it. They can't. They aren't going to deal with it. They're going to try to, because what they feel is like, hey, we don't have to be accountable. We don't have to be. Right? We got so because they bought into this lie, but they're playing and they're at such a level where they feel like they don't have to be accountable. And see, that's the problem here. But again, going back and actually being able to question, apply critical thinking, that's a must. But when you get these trainers who already are established, okay, there's your problem, right? They already signed the contract. A lot of these trainers are turned over. Like they're not coming back. Okay, I understand the information I put out here. It's like this is why when I put information out, even my flipping the script series, I have certain kind of because even my originally did my flipping the script series, I was going through everything. Okay, like hitting kind of like the high points of everything, like balance training, force free training, behavioral adjustment training, counter conditioning. Like I'm using certain reference points, to cover off. Because even with my flipping the script series, my original plan, like originally, like always, was um, for it to package it up, okay, in such a way that there was like a stopping point. Where it's like, okay, there's nothing left to say. And for me, there really isn't. That's why you can talk about debate. For me, going this issue about debate with these trainers who refuse to confront the real issue, and me in the dog training, it's such a joke to me that the debate issue isn't. I'm not motivated to engage some of these trainers because this is where when you get into this whole thing about cheap shots and stuff, right? If you watch my podcast I did with Miracle Canine, David, and Dave was respectful, okay, in the sense of allowing me, right? I laid out, go watch that debate. I laid out all the controversies I talk about in my flipping the script series. I go through, you know, a lot of only the line up to say these are not accidents. Okay. In fact, it's kind of ironic that the bonker, okay, controversy, with Gelman, I touched on that. In fact, you watch my video I did on that, my flipping the script series. I touched, I framed that. In fact, I did another video talking about it. I encourage you to watch that video. But then after I did the debate with Miracle Canine, like just recently, guess what happens? Miracle Canine under, scrutiny over the bonker. Okay. So it's so ironic to me say, wow, that's interesting. You know, Miracle Canine balanced dog training, right? And then, the confusion even there with, David saying, well, I wish someone would tell us, is it used? Should we use it? Should we? It's like this whole thing with like people, these trends all over the place. It's like they're not, it's like getting blown in the wind, really is. So, almost at 20 minutes. So I try to keep these parts within like the 20-minute time frame. So I'm gonna end um part one here. But again, I got a lot to say. Okay, I'm gonna be going through these comments. I'm gonna be touching on a lot of topics here. I'm gonna turn this into kind of a little longer series. But again, encourage you if you want to see the parts ahead of time, check out my member area option. I'll be posting there first, and I'll be releasing them over the next few days into as part of my on my YouTube channel or Rumble, and you check them out there. So thanks for watching.